Today we're going to go over making the extended hinge and the process that goes up to that to actually making an actual hinge. We're going to start with fresh clay. With your molds, anytime you're doing a fire forget hinge, you want to make sure that your gray and your pink are really well lubricated. The best way to do that is to take it and lubricate it and let it drip. Do it on a paper towel. I wouldn't suggest doing it on the Teflon because it's going to be a nightmare to and just leave it in there to soak. It's fine. It'll be a nightmare to roll out your snake after. Okay, you got your white one that's lubricated as well. I'm going to roll out the clay here. My technique might be a little bit less refined than Liad's. She spends much more time working with clay than I do, however. Get through it. I'm going to roll our snake out, measure it, and instead of just doing from one notch to another, we're going to go from the far end of the first notch to the far end of the third notch. With the extended hinge, even the fire forget hinge, you want to make it a little bit bigger because you want to actually use the fact that it has to extrude for compression. Now we're going to take our pink and we're going to take two white layers and they snap together. We're going to assemble this on top of the pink. As you can see, quite a bit of lubricant came out of the pink, which is quite fine. Now we're going to take our snake and then our blue layer over the top of that. And try and keep the rough edges to the rough edges. There's one side on all of the layers that's rough. Not mandatory, but probably a little bit better to keep it all together so that everything matches up correctly. You're going to squeeze this down. I'm going to use a C-clamp. I'm going to compress it. Okay, now that we've compressed our clay, our box, we should have extrusion, an extrusion of clay that's come out on each side of the holes. Your cleaner isn't for cleaning that out. Your cleaner is for giving you a clean edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some kind of a needle tool and get most of the extruded clay that's obviously in there and just clean it out real quick. Because if you try and stick it in there with all the clay is in there, it's going to bind up on you and it's not going to churn. Okay, so once again, it's just for creating a clean edge. Okay, all right. Now we're going to stick it on each side of the holes. Now get out the little bit less, what's left of the excess in there. And now we should have nice clean holes on the inside. Now because we put all that lubricant, opening this up right now should be relatively easy without even having to wait. It's important that you don't twist it when it comes out. You have one side here and you have the other side here. And as you can see, you've got nice clean dimples on both sides. Now you want to put it down the blue side on the hot plate because that's going to protect the little knuckle, dimple, whatever, from being damaged. As you can see, you have the nice little point there and here. And I just throw it on the hot plate. While that's drying, we're going to build a track mold real quick. This is another video, but I kind of just want to do a complete start to finish. Okay, we're going to roll out this spot of clay. With my cards, that's 5 cards. With your cards, you're going to have to kind of play with it to you get the right, whatever method you use for getting an offset, you'll have to play with it till you get the right level, but it should be about 2 millimeters thick. We're going to cut along those impression lines to the insides of them. Throw our clay back in the bag. Assuming that we've well lubricated our molds, I probably overdid these a little bit, the lubrication, but it's quite fine. You just stick your piece in there, match up the keyholes, and compress. This you can't use the C-clamp on because of the impression guides. Impression didn't come out good, so I'm going to go over it again, and we'll set this one out to dry. Okay. Okay. Best time to kind of clean this up is right now. It should be relatively easy with the tissue blade. I'm actually using the sharp edge. You can either use a sharp edge or not. It doesn't really matter. Should clean up relatively easy. Okay, and throw it on the hot plate. In the interest of keeping everything as short as possible, I've made some hollowed hinges, and you can find out in the other videos how to do that. They've already kind of dried. We're going to use this to kind of set up our actual hinge on the tracks. With this, once they're dry, the easiest way that I've found so far is to take the tissue blade, start from the middle of the hinge, and go like this, and that cuts off that part. And then you start from the middle of the hinge here, go like that, you have a nice clean edge, hinges there. Same thing again, we'll repeat with this one, make sure that it's fully extruded out. Start from the middle, use the sharp edge, start from the middle, slide out. Once again, kind of take that out there. Now we should have a nice clean edge. Okay, the hinges will literally pretty much fall out of the mold, contrary to the original ones that had gone out that had a problem. So here we have our little hinge pieces, and now we're going to set these up for working on the track molds, and there might be a little edge here or there you can just clean up with your finger. I'll tell you now that trying to sand these or to sand an extended hinge or even while they're this size is for me it's a futile effort. We want to kind of handle everything as a whole. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up. We're using this tool, and we're going to start mounting this on the hinge track. This drill bit's going to be essential in pretty much the whole construction of the hinge for a lot of different aspects. First thing I like to do is, you have two equal materials, so if you grind them together, they're going to basically brush away wherever they have resistance without really hurting one or the other. So you can call it mating, but you want to kind of mate both sides of the hinges, so when they actually end up on a hinge later on, they fit together nicely. Do that, you just twist them against each other, and you can do this with 5, 6, 7, just so you have a nice little line going there. Kind of does the sanding for you without having to be so detailed. Okay, so we've got one. I'm going to set one here and one here. And what we're going to do is we're going to wet our track a little bit. We're going to wet one of the hinges a little bit. And we're going to take some slip, let that dry a bit. Don't want it too wet, just want enough so that We get a nice wicking action when we put it in there. Okay. Now I'm going to put about 3 strips of PMC. Now you don't want the hinge to actually sit absolutely flat, tight, flush in the track, because we want to have a hairline of space so that the opposing hinge has space to move. Now you notice I didn't glue this one. The reason we're just using this to keep the whole system level and kind of in track, and so that we can that we know when we build up here we have a fair degree of confidence that we're running in a straight line. Essentially now it goes on the hot plate. I removed the expanded hinge that we built before. And once again I'm just going to do a little cleanup here. Make our life a little bit easier. Here you don't have the opportunity to kind of start right in the middle and just slice it off, so a little bit more tedious, but nevertheless easy enough. Okay. Now we're going to flip, we're going to slowly open this up. Now with the expanded hinges, more often than not, you're going to end up with some kind of line in there. Once again, I don't even attempt to try and sand it while it's in a hinge piece. We're going to deal with that later as a whole. Okay, so we have half the side out now. Now we've got to kind of work out the other one. Doing this, you know, as long as you keep the knife level, we're not looking to cut into the mold. Just kind of work the area around it. Now, we should be able just to pull it out really nicely. Now, no matter what you try and do, one side always seems to come out a little bit different than the other. I have a theory that a dehydrator might stop this. It's just the nature of the clay. So if we look at this when we do a double one, it's not perfectly even, but once again, it's not going to make a difference for us. As we move along, you'll see why. Okay, so now we're going to bring our piece back from the hot plate. I'm kind of going through this really quick, hoping that it's dry. I'm the type of kid who uses crazy glue on his models versus modeling glue, because my patience is a bit limited. But take this one out. That's the one we didn't glue. You want to spin this one out. It should come out nice and easy. So now we have our true starting point. That you can just use the tip of the knife to pop out. Okay. Now we're going to grab our piece, and once again, before you mount these, mate them, you know, with another hollowed hinge, and you just basically want to find that they spin together inside. You know, it might stick a little bit at first, but you'll get it nice, spinning nice and easy. Okay, and spin this side, and we should have a nice edge. Now, this particular one is chipped, and I'll show you later. This is the kind of the side that you're going to want to end up gluing, because that's the side the imperfection is on. But what we're going to do for now is we're going to set this piece in here. Make sure it kind of mates up in there nicely. Okay, it sticks a little bit, so let's take it to the other side and just run it again one more time through here. I might even want to take this and run the drill real loosely through here. Okay. Stick it in here again. Okay. Still don't like it so much, so one more time, a little bit more material. A slight intermission for lack of video space. Okay, so we're going to sit here and we're going to try and get this fitted in here good. That looks like a good fit. So that's essentially our holder, our placeholder now. Now we want to stick on the other side so we have our idea of where it's going to be. Okay, now this part's going to be a little bit trickier, but once again we're going to practice being as much standoff as possible with this. So stick this back in here. We're going to take our brush. Again, we're just going to get that first area on the track a little bit wet. And then take your worst part of your hinge, like this one's got a little bit of a line in it. Wet it. Right there. Take a couple of strips, stripes, extrusions, whatnot from your syringe. To make this a little bit easier to handle and to put on, I would suggest maybe even using the drill bit once again to, you want to kind of slide this in so that the clay, if anywhere, goes to the other side, goes to the outside. Okay. Alright. Now one thing you do want to kind of do is make sure you've got enough space in between. The easiest way to do that, take a couple pieces of paper, stick that in between each line. That's going to help us when things shrinks during firing to give us a little bit of tolerance. Okay. Now we're going to set it back on the hot plate and then start strengthening it up. Okay, so now we've returned it from the hot plate. Now we need to strengthen this up. So what we're going to do is going to take a brush. And you got to make sure, obviously, that you don't get the middle hinge, because that's what's basically floating right now. We need a handy dandy syringe. And try and extrude it into the crack. This is kind of, if anybody's familiar with doing drywall, kind of similar to taping. Basically, this clay shaper, smooth it off. Doesn't have to be perfect the first time. We're going to do this a couple of times. Take it to the other side. Here we have from originally, when I put it in here, you got some dry clay pieces. You want to get rid of those. Give it a little bit of dampness. Okay. Again, we're going to extrude the clay into the crack. Okay, so now we've got the other side, and we're going to smooth this one, and we're going to smooth this one, and we're going to throw it back on the hot plate to dry. Okay. Okay. That's a little more juice here. So we're going to take and we're going to put right about 3 strips of slip, and we are going to turn that around, place it on the other side of our hinge. I'm going to drop that to the side so you can see. Shouldn't have done that, but hit it again. Now we're going to set that on the hot plate. So now that this piece is returned from the hot plate, we got to shore it up as well. So we're going to add a little bit of moisture here. Okay. Same concept as before. We're going to kind of try to extrude it into the crack. Make sure you get the right side or the hinge will not move after. I'm sorry it's a little bit hard to do this and show you on the camera, but there we go. Take this again, brush it out. We'll hit it again after. Now for this side. Okay, we brought it back from the hot plate. I'm actually kind of pushing the envelope here because I really didn't give it a lot of time to dry. I'm going to slice off this side. We're going to slice off this side. And we're going to clean up the edges a bit. The two sides, I want to get a little bit more, I was going to say slip into here, but I don't even know if that's even necessary. Okay, before we sand it, now you got to kind of basically seat the hinge. And that's just by working it back and forth until it clears a little bit. I got a little bit of space. Now, before you push that too much, you want to kind of lay it flat on your sanding block or whatever you're using. This one's like a year old, but still effective. Now, before you try and fully seat the hinge and work it back and forth, you got to kind of get this extra slip off that we put on when we short it up. Otherwise, it's going to impede in the flow back and forth. Okay. So again, we're working it back and forth. Okay. A little bit more. We should actually have it so that they close. And you know, there's little pieces that are stopping it in there, and that's okay. The nice thing is that they kind of just rub each other away until you get where you need to be. Next is own internal sandpaper. Actually more similar to getting a new car and breaking it in. We're just kind of seating all of it. Okay. So, there we go. That's our first side that's completely clear. Now move to the other side. And just gently work it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Back and forth. I'm going to sand this one a little bit more. Brush. Brush again. Let's see, that side's good. And this side is almost there. Almost. Just a little bit more sanding. Almost. I think I'm going to do with this one. Just take a sandpaper like this. Put it between your fingers so you get the angle. So that one side is kind of closed, and you've got this bow on the other side. Run it back and forth through here. And I'm pretty sure that'll give us the effect we're looking for going this way. Okay. And go. We are seated on both sides, and you can keep working it until you're fully satisfied it's got its full extension. And this one is there. Okay. Now it's a matter of just sanding it to your heart's content. This one actually needs to be filled in a little bit more. You know, it's sanded and worked. You can shore up the sides, give a little bit more strength over there, and what you'll end up with, you know, is something that looks a little bit closer to this with a little bit of work, similar to this. You can throw end caps on them to give a little bit of design. That's essentially it.